Hey Riley, I'm gonna make you the host, okay?
Okay. I know she closed it and I was like, oh wait, we're supposed to come back to this me yesterday.
Good morning, Gina.
Good morning, Bella. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Yay. I'm doing great, thank you. Did you have a nice morning?
Yeah, well, every morning getting ready for summer bridge is great, so.
I agree. Hi, Riley. Hi, Matthew. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Good.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. Well, I don't see you yet, but hopefully I'll see you soon. Hello. All right, welcome to class today. I'd love to see your faces. So today we're going to primarily have a talk about the reading that I introduced yesterday, A Talk to Teachers. And so about half of the team submitted the annotation, and those were all graded with some of my comments. If you haven't submitted it yet, I've kept it open until the end of the day today. So please do submit so I can give you feedback, comments, and check in with you. And also because it forms part of the foundation for the little essay you're going to be writing. So we'll have a conversation today, which I'm really excited about. And at this point, throw into the chat at least one thing that that you want to either discuss about the reading, or a question that you have about A Talk to Teachers, or a point, a quote that you think would be interesting to discuss, whatever it is. I'd prefer a question or a comment, so we can get a direction of where your thinking is. And while you're all doing that, I'd love to hear from you. First of all, how was the reading for you? What were your initial impressions of it? Let's start there. And anybody's welcome to jump in.
I thought that the like reading it was really interesting because a lot of it still relates to today. So it kind of like saddened me to see that like that writing was like it was like a while back, but it's still so relatable today, and that they still face, you know, so many struggles. That's mostly what I took from it. And a lot of the quotes were, I don't know, they're really powerful.
Yeah. How did you, when you had that realization, or maybe you already knew that, but when you were reading it and that struck you, how did that make you feel, or what was your response to that?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not really like shocked because I mean, we all know that like racism exists, it's even in the system. And it kind of just makes me, I guess, sad because I just keep realizing that like it's still going on. Like what he like writes is still relates to today.
Yeah. How about anybody else on that point? How many, you can do a show of hands, or you can do the little raise your hand thing. If you hit participants, you have the ability to raise your hand. So, but how many of you felt that way, that you felt like, wow, this could have been written today? Just a show of hands. Yeah. And I agree. And I'm curious, how many of you were surprised that it felt like it could be written today? How many of you were surprised, or at least had a response like, wow, really? Still going on today? No, all of you. How many of you were like, no, this doesn't surprise me at all, of course? Yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're thinking about writing an essay and incorporating this into one of your points, one of the areas you can explore is the lack of surprise, is the fact that this is still going on, and sort of what do you make of that? What's going on here? There are others who read this who have different experiences than you, who might be surprised that it's such a similar tone. And Julie, you mentioned that it saddened you a little bit, and I'm curious what other people's reactions were to this fact or realization, or note that it's very similar. It feels like it could have been written today. What were your responses to that? Anybody can speak up, or I'll call on people. Who wants to jump in and talk a little bit about your response to the piece, or your response to what it's talking about? Yeah, Adon.
I kind of noticed that he brought up a point about how it's embedded in children at an early age, and that's kind of how they view the world, and how at an early age they're kind of taught that that they're not capable of being as superior as what he said as a white man, and that kind of like shocked me because we're basically teaching like our kids that at an early age.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting article. I need to dig it up, and it's not required, but I will share it with you in case you want to look at it. And it talks about the 5 ways that children are taught. And one of the ways is you teach children to be a cog in the system, right? You do the rote math and the rote memorization, and then you become a worker. And then all the way up to teaching people to really think critically and to really be leaders, et cetera. And these are very distinct and different ways of teaching. And I'm gonna find that and share it with you. You don't have to read it, but I will put it up on Canvas for you. But yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, my guess is, based on what you've shared so far, that this is something that you've already started to grapple with, pushing back on frames. It took me a little longer in my life to start pushing back on frames because I had not only societal frames, but familial frames. And I always felt like they seemed odd and they didn't make sense, but I didn't really understand that I could push back on them until much later in my life. But I'm curious, I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, before I jump into the frame question, does anybody else have anything they want to share about their response to the piece, how you reacted to it, what your impressions of it were? Anybody else? And I haven't seen anything in the chat yet. Make sure you put your discussion questions and thoughts into the chat. So I'm looking for that from each of you. Okay, so let's jump into this framing conversation. So James Baldwin is really talking about at some point, if you don't fall into the mainstream frame, that you have to figure out how to navigate it or live within it, et cetera. So I'm curious if any of you would like to share maybe a moment in your life when you realized there was a frame going on, or you had a cognitive dissonance about what you were being told versus what you felt like you knew inside. Yeah, Don. And then
Kind of from like my family, we're kind of, it's not really an expectation to go to college. It's kind of, we do manual labor. And I know you mentioned that kind of breaking the mold, and that's kind of what I got from the reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that on the first day that you wanted to break a mold, that you sort of wanted to push back on maybe a frame that you were falling into or stepping into. And how did you said your family, college education was important. So it sounds like your family played a little bit of a role in helping you break that frame. Were there any other ways that you were able to sort of push back on that frame and try to get out from under it a little bit?
Pretty much just surrounding myself with people who had like the same values as me. I did the upper bound program at Sonoma, and they embedded in me that college education was important.
Awesome. So connecting with opportunities that are going to help change the frame or give you the structure that maybe we can't get on our own, especially when we don't have a lot of agency, like when you're younger, when I was younger, when we were younger, we don't necessarily have the agency to push back. All we can do is internally try to figure it out. Anybody else? I would love to hear from more of you about frames in where you felt like a cognitive dissonance. And what I mean by that is you were being told something or presented with something, and you thought in your soul, that doesn't, no, but they're saying, and it kind of struggling with what you were being told versus what you feel inside. That's sort of a cognitive dissonance. I'd love to hear from anybody else. And again, I'm still not seeing anything in the chat, and I need everybody to put your comment in the chat. Hey, thank you, Katya. But yeah, anybody else want to share a moment in their life where they had that sort of difference in what they were being told versus what was going on inside? Okay, I'm going to start calling on people. Brittany, let me hear from you.
So the cognitive difference?
Yeah, dissonance. It's a psychological term.
Can you explain more in that? Because I'm still confused, kind of.
Sure. It's basically when you are being told something or presented with something and it doesn't necessarily play into what you think or what you feel or what's going on inside you. And so it doesn't make sense. Like your brain can't make sense of it or is struggling because it doesn't, what you're being told doesn't really jibe with what you think you know, or what you have feeling inside. So so James Baldwin talked about realizing that when mainstream society called him the N-word or treated him like he was nothing, that didn't feel right to him, right? He's like, that doesn't make any sense because I know I'm something, so I've either got to accept what they say and be enraged by it and hold that in, or I've got to figure out a way to live the life I think I should be living. So for him, that was the moment, was trying to make sense of that and then trying to do something about it. And so I'm curious in your life, if you've had any moments like that where societally you were getting information and that didn't jibe with what was going on inside you. And then Bella, I'll have you go after Brittany.
I was going to say the president.
Okay. Is there anything specific that has come up in the past few years that you'd like to call out?
I mean, he's locking up a lot of children in cages and then spraying a lot harmful chemicals and then calling us job stealers and like we should go back to our own country when this was on stolen land. It doesn't make sense.
Good.
So,
Yeah. Yes, that doesn't make sense. And then there's a choice there. You can either be like, oh, fine, I give up, right? And accept it and then go through that pain, right? Or you can push back and speak up and tell your narrative and tell your story and reframe. And you see that a little bit in the media. When you talk about, when you mentioned just now, children being held at the border, we can call that many things, right? We can call that detaining. We can call that processing, and we can call that a concentration camp. Like there are many words, many ways of describing that. And every single way we describe it carries with it a different connotation. And so we have to think about what words are we using. And so pushing back on, you're going to read an article tonight or a piece tonight about native lands and the way natives were treated, in particular in California, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And there is a word that's used when Europeans get to the lands that where the natives lived, and it's contact, making contact. And when you hear the phrase making contact, when Europeans made contact with the Native Americans, or when natives had contact with the Europeans, does that sound vicious or brutal, or it sounds pretty innocuous, right? We made contact. So is there another way to describe that that maybe represents what happened a little bit more explicitly? And so when you talk about that, yeah, also you're hearing about how you're being described, or how people from where you're from are being described. And that of course doesn't make sense because that's not what you know. And again, pushing back on that, talking about it, speaking up. Bella.
Hi, I had an example. So for me, growing up, my family has a lot of different views than me. And it's interesting because we're still considered, everybody in my family is still considered on the liberal side of the spectrum, but I'm way over here and they're more over here. So there was always a little bit of a disconnect in a lot of things that they would tell me and I'd be like, that doesn't sound right. The experience that specifically I can think of was I was raised with the Catholic Church, and it wasn't a parent thing. It was I wanted to be part of the Catholic Church. So it's very rare you'll find a kid who wants to go to church and that was me. And it was because I was raised around this idea that God is love and everybody loves each other. And then you would hear things about how they hate the gays or they hate Jewish people or whatever it was. And it just didn't make sense to me because I'm just if he's love, he can also hate. So that was one big moment for me. It was realizing that what their idea of Catholicism is doesn't have to be mine. And from that point on, like, I don't have to have a label for my religion. I can just kind of freewheel it. And that was like one huge moment for me, was like, that just doesn't feel right.
Mhm. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. I had a similar experience. I'm progressive and my parents are conservative. And so I had lots of moments of cognitive dissonance in my life and lots of moments of frames being pushed on me that that didn't make sense. And one of them was religion. My parents in particular, my mom, very Catholic. And I felt the same way. God is love. And then as you learn, oh, wait, God might be love, but the people who are practicing it, they're not necessarily all love. Definitely had me rethinking that as well. But getting out from under that frame was hard because it was so all-encompassing. Does anybody else have a situation to share in which they made a realization that what was being presented to them or pushed on them wasn't exactly what they felt they knew?
But isn't it so contradicting with people who try to practice what God say and like not praise what he's trying to say? Like when we're in like, I don't know the Bible by heart, but I do know one of the phrases is don't hate what God creates. It's so contradicting when there's people who try to praise the Lord and then like there's movement Black Lives Matters and they're like, well, all lives matter, blue lives matter. I'm like, well, you're a Christian and you're trying to back up you're trying to use your evidence as the Bible, and yet you're not even listening to what the Bible says.
Yeah. No, Brittany, I appreciate, was that Brittany?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I don't know if Bella, you wanted to, or if anybody else wanted to comment on that, and then I'm happy to jump in after that. Does anybody have anything they want to say about that?
I wanted to go off of that and just be like, yeah, it's a very strange disconnect from there about like what he's preaching versus what they decide to do. And if we look back on the Catholic Church, like if you think about the Crusades, there was nothing about love with that. And if you learn about the mission system in California, there was nothing loving about that either. But I think one really important thing during quarantine, one big frame of mind that I had to like disestablish is labels. Is if you say that like all Christians one thing, you're bound to be wrong, because I live in an area where majority of the people go to one church. There's one giant church in my area. And those are the same people who they might say all lives matter, but they're still marching in the streets. They're still showing up to rallies because it's like, technically you're right. All lives do matter. That's not really the point we're trying to make right now, but you're right. So like, I think it's important to remember that it's just like, maybe they were raised with that thought, but they are able to get outside of the thought frame, and they are able to, just like anybody else, become more than just that label. And yeah, I don't understand how somebody could be like, love everything God creates, and then be like, Black people. Like, I don't get, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, it's a thing that is happening right now, and it's very interesting to be able to look outside of it and be like, why are you being like this? But also being able to step inside of it and being like, okay, they have to change a bit, but they're almost in the right idea. They're almost there. They just have to shift their focus a little bit more. Those are my thoughts on it.
No, I appreciate that, Bella. And what I want to add to that is whether it's religion, and whichever religion, or whether it's politics, or whether it's community organizations, there is the mission and the ideal, and then there is human fallibility and human ability, right? So, and we're all different. And then also you have any text, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, my favorite, you can't see my shelf, but this book, we can all interpret things very differently, right? So that's why we have different sects of different religions, right? Because people are interpreting slightly differently. I think this means that, I think this means that. And then these texts have been translated a million times. But the point is, there is the ideal, and then there is humans trying to reach that ideal, and sometimes using people's ability to, or people's belief in the ideal to manipulate. I mean, there's all kinds of motivations. And so I think remembering that is really important. And like I, you know, because of my experiences, I believe I have my own spirituality, but I don't call myself Christian anymore. But I have a million friends who are deeply Christian. And so we talk all the time and we love each other because of our humanity. And so I, you know, anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to say is to sort of break it down into individualistically. And again, never let anyone push a frame on you. All of this religion is bad. All of this group of people is bad or good or whatever. Is to really be able to critically think for yourself. I've been told this, but this person doesn't seem to fall into that. How do I process that? Well, you figure that out. And so to bring that back to the reading, I think that is something that James Baldwin and people of color in the U.S. and women in the U.S. have had to figure out or start to push back against probably pretty early, right? Because, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so anybody want to add to that piece of the conversation? I'm jumping into the chat to do a quick read, but if anybody wants to jump in on any of that, I'd love to hear from you.
I wanted to add one thing,
Yeah.
and that is how you guys brought up the riots and like the all lives and like Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
That like some food for thought. That people that are like trying to like say, oh, the Bible this, and try to use it to say like it goes against homophobia, transphobia, racism, that, and like usually the stereotypical person that's doing that is like the white Christian person. The Bible and the era and the place it was written and took place, no one there was white. That was the Middle East and Italy and Mediterranean. So just some food for thoughts when you see Bible quotes and someone trying to back up homophobia, racism, and the like. Keep that in mind. It's like you're backing up something that contradicts yourself because the people that lived those events didn't fit your ideal, your message. So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. And that's, again, the human piece, the human piece. And so, so Katya writes in the chat, the question that kept coming up for Katya was, if racism is embedded to children at a young age, has school or any other form of education taught us racism through history without us realizing? So Katya, can you talk a little bit more about that thought?
Yeah, so I was kind of reading it, and then they were talking about how, I think the quote was, I kind of summarized it, but it was, in order to justify men were treated as animals. And then I summarized, like, I ... brainwashed into believing they were animals and deserved to be treated that way. So then I started thinking about, like, well, have we been taught racism through history? Like, we were taught, it wasn't until high school that I was taught that like California was given to us, and like something like the president took it by gunpoint or something. But up until high school, I was taught that like it was like a signed agreement, like it was consensual. So it's like how have we been taught in other aspects?
Yeah.
That, or have they like normalized it or something?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a very specific way of teaching, and Baldwin brings this up in the article, that some of the things we've been taught throughout history are, you know, for lack of a better term, whitewashed, right? They're meant to present the winner or the victor in the best light, and that is always true. I wish I could find the article, but years ago when I was in high school, I read about a painting in England, and it was a painting of Richard III. And if you don't know who Richard III was, there's a Shakespeare play written about him, that he was a hunchback and he was kind of a villain. And in this painting, apparently they x-rayed it. And if you look, there were several layers of paint, depending on who was in power at the time. And they either painted him standing up straight, or they repainted him hunched over, or they repainted him standing up straight, they repainted him hunched over. And that fascinated me because it was the winner trying to shape the narrative and of who Richard III was. And that is, we all do it, right? We all put ourselves in the best light when we can. Hopefully we're honest with ourselves, but sometimes we delude ourselves. We're all human and we do it. And when you're outside of the mainstream frame, you start to learn, oh wait, that doesn't seem right. but it harms everyone. It doesn't just harm the, as again, as Baldwin says, it doesn't just harm the people who are considered minority or people of color, or it also harms those in power, because we can be living in a delusion. We can be lying to ourselves and really not understanding our history, and therefore doomed to repeat it. I'll take the pandemic we're currently in the midst of, the reason why we're here like this and not together in person. And we had a pandemic 100 years ago, the flu pandemic, and all global, and millions of people died. And in that flu pandemic, there were specific spikes, and there were people who didn't want to wear masks. San Francisco had an anti-mask league, and they were, up in arms about the fact that they had to wear masks. Does that sound familiar? We saw that happening here in the US. If we just go back and look at our history and really see it as it is, which is hard because it's written by different people, then we can start to be like, oh, we have a roadmap. I mean, it's not going to be exactly the same, but we have some guides. But if we don't accurately reflect our history, the good, the bad, the ugly, the brutal, the wonderful, we then can be doomed to repeat it, and then we can lie to ourselves. And a couple of you, when I read your annotations, you pointed at Baldwin's very quote. He says the brutal, beautiful. I can't think of the exact words, but he uses horrific words and nice words, right, in the same sentence. And he's saying that everything is complex. Nothing is black and white. Everything it's brutal and it's beautiful. And nothing's all bad or all good. And so he's trying to say we've got to grapple with that whole thing. And so to get back to Katya's point about schools, yeah, I mean, we're taught things in a certain way, and there's a lot more to it, and it takes some work to go and sort of parse that out. And hopefully in college you'll be able to take a history class or to delve into that. There's a great book, if you haven't read it, called The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And he gives an alternate view of history. And it's also sort of, he pulls stories together that we weren't aware of, we probably didn't know. For example, I'm sure you're hearing of the Tulsa race massacre in 1921, is that right? That's not something I was ever taught. I had no clue that at some point a group of white people in Tulsa, Oklahoma went and bombed a black township and killed people. I had no idea. And now it's something hopefully we're starting to talk about more and incorporate into our knowledge base. But yeah, we're not taught everything, for better or for worse. Anybody want to comment on that?
I will.
Okay, great.
So I was typing it into the chat, but
Yeah.
might as well tell you guys. There's a book I read that my AP literature teacher told us how to read against our principal's wishes, and it's called Forgotten Fire. It's about the Armenian genocide that took place. And there's this huge thing that people say, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, that's all fake and blah, blah, blah. But the author that wrote it, grandfather was part of it, was one of the survivors. And so, if you look at history and history textbooks, it never shows up, but it neared the numbers of the Holocaust. And I didn't know about it until I read it. So just to give you an idea of what we're being taught in history in our school system, and though it's being left out. So
I appreciate that, Matthew. Yeah, and that was in the early 20th century, and I didn't know about that either until I met a friend in college who was Armenian, and her father as well was a survivor, and her grandfather, was a survivor, and so I learned. And there is actually, the Armenian genocide is included in the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles now, which is important. And we have to think about the behavior of the U.S. when hundreds of thousands upon millions of people die based on the actions of another group. That is a genocide. And what happened to the native peoples of the U.S. is a genocide. And yet that's not what we call it here, because that's horrifying that maybe our ancestors or might have been responsible for that. So that's hard to accept and admit, and so we say it more carefully. And it's up to you sometimes to kind of go and get the full picture. All right, so Adelaida, you write, a lot of oppression to those of color. I feel like Baldwin is really trying to tell the teachers, like, hey, you should change the prejudice view on people of color and false history that's being taught about African Americans. Yeah, I think I appreciate that. Adelaida, do you want to add anything to what you said there?
Yeah, there's like a lot of false information in like schools, and honestly, like I said earlier, racism isn't, you're not born with racism, it's taught. And I think that it's important that people really get educated and start like reading about the historical background on the Black Lives Matter movement and everything about that. So
Yeah. And then I saw, thank you, Adon, and a few of you had asked, what does go for broke mean? He said that any person who's responsible and deals with the minds and hearts of young children should be ready to go for broke. Go for broke is basically do it, like all in, jump in, make it happen. And so what he's saying to teachers there is do it. Hey, don't be afraid. Just say it explicitly. Let's do this, is what he's basically trying to say there. And Nadia writes, if the purpose of education is for you to think for yourself, but society is scared of people to stray from the majority opinion, what should schools actually teach? What a great question. Thank you so much, Nadia. And I also want to pull into that, the question, Baldwin says, the crucial paradox which confronts us here is the whole process of education occurs within a social framework and is designed to perpetuate the aims of society. So we have this one goal, perpetuate the aims of society so that society runs smoothly, right? Like any education is a bit of an indoctrination into how things work, wherever you are, so that you know how to be in society, so that you know how to move through the world. Remember in my kindergarten class, they had us counting money and buying candy so that we knew how the monetary system worked. So education is that. But there's also this aspect of education, like, hey, we need to teach people to think for themselves. We need to teach them what's what so that they can become critical thinkers and think about the problems and the ills of society and try to solve them or fix them or advance them and make them better. And those are extremely contradictory. That's a paradox when two things very different in the same set of goals. And so what do you think schools should actually teach? What do you guys think schools should actually teach? Are you happy with your K-12 education? Or was there something lacking that you really wished was there? What do you think? Nadia, let's start with you since you posed the question. I'm curious where you're at.
I wish they would teach more like philosophical questions, more about like life, and like we can question like, why are we here? Why are we on this earth? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and in the construct of teaching to the test, right? In the construct, oh, we have to hit our marks. That sort of free-flowing, somewhat messy, somewhat, wow, there's not a right or wrong answer, is hard, right? And it takes time. And so unfortunately, it gets the short shrift in the system. So now that you're here, now that you're at Sonoma State, seek that out, pursue that, push on that, because you have the opportunity. I wish we could do that in high schools, and some do, but now you're here and that can happen. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about what you'd like to see from K-12 education or from your education, or what you liked about your education? Either way.
Hey, so just last thing I'll probably say, swear, promise.
I think that's okay.
But being in Puerta means that you guys all had interest in being educators. So that I'm in Puerta, Bella's in Puerta, we all want to be educators. So we have or will have the power to change the education system. So if you don't like what's happening now, then when you get your credential and you get into school, then help change it for future generations.
Yes, 100%, 100%. You have the power to shift the framing, to shift the narrative, to push things in a direction you think might be more appropriate for what we need, right? And start seeking out people already out there. Like James Baldwin, you may or may not love him. I happen to just like love James Baldwin. I'll read or watch anything he says or writes. I think he's amazing. And there are a bunch of other people that I have learned about over the time that I will listen to and that I will connect with, and I will engage with what they put out, and I encourage you all to do that too. Some of it feels very stuffy, academic, and out of reach, but some of it is hopefully really going to resonate with you. And there are people out there trying to do the work, and you can start connecting with, first of all, the literature and the videos and the content, and then hopefully with them. So that can be really exciting. Like there's a media person I kind of like, her name is Renee Hobbs, whatever. I've read a bunch of her stuff. I think she's neat. And then I got to moderate a discussion a few weeks back. And who shows up? Renee Hobbs was in this discussion. I was moderating. So I felt like, oh my God, a little starstruck. But no one else is going to know who she is. But people like that, like you may all of a sudden be in a room with them, and that can be really exciting, and you can have this conversation with them. And that will happen for you, you know. But pay attention and start pulling that and engaging in it. Let's see, Dom writes a quote from James Baldwin: "What you were describing was not me. What you were showing was not me. It had to be something else, something you were afraid of. Let me tell you this, I am not the N-word. Who is that person then? All of this is not necessary for me. It's necessary to you." That quote, thank you, Dom, for sharing it. Dom, can you tell me what that quote meant to you or revealed to you or how you perceived it?
When I was watching when he was talking about the N-word, they were mentioning how the black community did not come, they didn't make up that word. It was more of the Caucasians. They never used that word to identify themselves, and they still don't. That's why he says that that's not who he is, because that word is built out of lies, out of stereotypes, out of things that it's not them. And it's meant to be as negative, because whenever someone referred to them with the N-word, it was never to appreciate their culture. It was more to, be super derogatory, super just negative, offending them. And obviously it wasn't something that they wanted to be called. And from then they know that they in this country specifically, they are not appreciated, they're not valued, which is something that I also saw in the video. And I thought that quote was super interesting, because it just, you can come up with so many things of why this isn't the right thing to be call them, because it's not them, it's not who they are, and they should be more appreciated here.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add? Yes, Dom. Yes, 100%. Anybody else want to add to that? Yeah, I think that's really important, that constructs are pushed on or laid over populations, one, to exert control, and two, to define in a way that's helpful to the majority or the mainstream, whoever that is. And we're talking here about the US, and so we're talking about white society, right? But wherever you are, this happens all over the world in various different constructs, which is why I always try to say words like mainstream society, et cetera. But here we know it's white society that has that sort of lever, that has those levers. And so it's really important to think about, why are things being used a certain way? Why are things framed a certain way? There's a documentary on Netflix, but it's also free on YouTube. So I'll share the link to it, called The 13th. Has anybody seen The 13th? Okay, Matthew and Riley, yes. I don't see everybody on the screen, but if you're raising your hand, awesome. If you have not seen The 13th, I would really encourage you to look at it. It's about the 13th Amendment, and it talks about how the evolution of Blacks from slaves into Jim Crow, et cetera. And one of the big takeaways that resonated with me in that video was the reframing of who a Black person was after slavery. During times of slavery, the Black person was, well, there were different tropes, but one of the main ones was friendly, hapless, loving, will take care of us and do stuff because they love us white people. After slavery, there was a desire to continue to extract work from the African-American population. And so the framing of who a Black person was changed. All of a sudden they became criminal and shiftless and distrustful, just totally different than and the Black population hadn't changed, but the narrative surrounding who they were to achieve certain ends changed. And so it's also important to think about that. Anyways, that's in The 13th, and it's a really great thing to read. And think about our own narratives. I think about, I'm a woman, so I think about like how women are viewed. That was a lot of cognitive dissonance for me growing up. Like, I'm not that. Like, that's odd. That's not how I think, see myself, and that's not what I'm interested in. And then there's another shorter video I'll share with you. It's a 60 minutes piece on Huckleberry Finn and whether or not the N word should be replaced with a different word, in this case, the word slave. And there was a really robust conversation about whether that's censorship or whether that's helpful. And an African-American scholar said, you know, it's important to keep that word in because we have to remember its power and that it was meant to shame, and thus keep people in line. And so, so yes, frames and narratives and things like that. I'm not thinking of narratives about women that are derogatory, certainly, right? I'm not putting those out there, I hope, you know, so we're not doing that ourselves. Someone else is doing that for some sort of purpose, whether it's conscious or unconscious, some sort of purpose. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Jimena, one of my takeaways from this reading is that we have to keep in mind that all the negative stereotypes that exist is not what defines someone. We need to work on changing that narrative, and start by educating people. That's a great, do you have anything you want to add? I think it's very similar to what we've been saying, but Jimena, I want to give you the opportunity to discuss it if you like.
Not really. It's just that I like personally have had conversations with like people before, and it's just like, I think just like this whole race situation in general, like it's so like, it's a touchy subject for some people, but I think the reason like being is because like they don't know how to talk about it. Like I feel like a lot of the time we're not like taught how to like talk about it. Instead we're just like, we feel uncomfortable, so we're just like, we're not going to talk about it, okay, moving on. And I just feel like that being like such an important aspect, like we need to start like educating people on how to even talk about it. Like let's start there. I think that's my thing too. Like it would be nice to be able to like comfortably talk to people about it, like being able to know like how to approach it as well.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, and that's a tough one because we know that we can all get defensive when someone accuses us of something that maybe we don't fully understand. And you're right, it's hard to have a conversation with someone who's not ready to hear it. I was going to say something, forgive me. I really, really do appreciate that. And I think that's something we need to explore. I don't think I have the answers, but we don't know how to talk about this because of these disconnects that we do have. Earlier, we talked about the phrase all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. Does it have to be a versus? We know that politically those phrases have been infused with certain things, but Bella made the really important point that people who have been indoctrinated into the idea of all lives matter might still in their actions show that they're supporting Black Lives Matter or people of color. They just don't have the language yet, or they're in a different language base or bubble. And so it's remembering, you know, not to let words trigger us, but to really look at someone's intentions and behavior and helping guide them. But then that's a lot of work for someone who's in the position of having to teach. It can be emotionally hard. It can be time consuming. And so there's so much to navigate there. And also there's the idea of, you know, if you as the person who's marginalized is meeting someone where they are and they're not marginalized, that can be hard too. You want them to kind of meet you where you're at. And so there's this dance that everyone does. And so I think, you know, James Baldwin writes and he talks and he interviews and he does a lot of that work to try to help us, how to help us communicate. And I encourage you to watch some of his videos on YouTube of his interviews. Yeah, does anyone have anything they want to add to that? That's an important concept and it's not something we're going to solve, but it's something I think we should all work to solve. Anybody else want to add to that? All right, I know our time is quickly moving, so I'm gonna get through a few more things and then I want to talk about what's happening tonight, what your next step is. But I do want to call Adelaida, just like Jane Elliott said, there's only one race, the human race. I just read something, there's a writer I follow, it's a site called I Effing Love Science, and she just wrote about the single biggest mistake in her opinion that science has made was to categorize races, because it's led to us separating ourselves when really it's all social constructs. Culture is important, but seeing, honoring, and accepting culture is different than separating out based on that. So I'm just going to look through does anybody want to add anything that I haven't gotten to? I have 14 messages and we only have 5-ish minutes left. So is anybody, please speak up if there's something you want to make sure gets said that hasn't been said yet while I quickly look through the chat. Yeah, thanks, Alejandro. Why is systemic racism still a thing today? Something that stood out to me is we have a whole race of people, a whole republic who believes myths. That quote reinforces the idea that Americans are still not educated and participate in allowing racism to happen. And again, as Matthew so wonderfully said, you have the ability as future teachers to help begin to change that narrative. And I'm gonna go down a little bit farther here. Great, great, great. Yeah, great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, last chance. Anybody want to say something that we didn't touch on that you think it's important to share? Okay, great. All right, so what you're going to do with this and then your next reading is eventually, and later in the week, start writing a draft essay. And it's going to be basically a 1,000 to 1,200 word essay, which translates into roughly 3 pages. And you're going to take some sort of perspective and write. And so I think you've all started to form opinions and ideas and perspective and your own perspectives about what you just read. And of course you bring to the table your life experience, which is really valuable and is really going to help make sense of what you're reading, etc. And so the next reading you have, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go over the next reading you have. Excuse me 2 seconds. Excuse me, let me get to one. Sorry, I'm trying to here we go. For some reason, why can't I get over? All right, well, let me do this. Okay. Okay, so your next assignment is, if I go to modules and I click into day 3, we have our workshop here, and then down at the bottom is the reading and writing homework. So when I click on this, you're doing a discussion on a reading. So we discussed in person today. Tomorrow, we're not meeting for class. Tomorrow, you're actually doing a discussion on the Canvas discussion thread. And this is stuff you'll be doing in the fall as well. So getting used to that little Canvas discussion interface is really important. So you will read, excuse me, 2 things. You will watch this video by Dr. Ashley Hall, and it's about minutes, it's 34 minutes. And it's really interesting. He talks about his experience and he talks about Native peoples from what is now California. Yeah, 35 minutes. And then you are going to read this article, Protecting the Treasure, A History of Indigenous Education in California. Now, don't, again, I think this way, so I want to offer it, but you can take it or leave it. This is actually an 18-page document, but 3 of the pages are notes and references, and the text is a lot bigger than what you just read. So if you're worried about time, it's hopefully a pretty straightforward read for you. So that's here, read that, and you're going to do the same thing you did with a talk to teachers. You're going to annotate, you're going to take notes, you're going to ask yourself some questions, and you're going to use those to inform the discussion that you have tomorrow on the discussion thread. You can also look at this document here. This is just a 2-page document on the 3 forms of argument: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is here, I'll just show it to you so you can see it. So ethos is basically making an appeal to someone's ethics. That's where the word ethics comes from. Making an appeal to character. Like, you're a good person, why do you think this way? Or you're a good person, why are you saying these things? Pathos is appealing to someone's emotions. You know, my loved one was affected and it really harmed me, and what if this happened to your loved one, is an appeal to the emotions. And logos is an appeal to logic. So using data, you know, all this data shows this. So generally a mix of these 3 is really helpful in discussing and persuading. But this is here for you to look at a little bit more fully. And then here are the directions for your discussion. So you're going to share a question or comment. And it has to be not just a yes or no question. It has to be something that elicits discussion and provokes conversation. And then you're going to read through and choose one of your peers' comments to respond to. You can respond to more, but at least one. And here's a link to that discussion thread here. And because we're not, questions about that? And because we're not meeting tomorrow or Friday, I just want to show you really quickly what's happening because it's big and you should be aware of it from me. So you can see that tomorrow, if I click here on the Thursday session, I'm getting to information about how to draft an essay, and you're going to start to draft your essay. And if I click on the essay here or the essay draft link here, I'm going to get to the actual assignment. And you're going to draw upon your free write notes, your notes and the discussion to write a thesis-driven essay. And this video will help you define what that is. You're going to use your analysis of a talk to teachers and protecting the treasure. And again, 1,000 to 1,200 words, which is about 3 pages. And I want to see well organized, clearly written, and using evidence from the text in your own life to make your point, okay? I put a basic style guide here of at least I want 1-inch margins, I want, 12-point font, the very basic. So make sure you look at the style guide so that you have just a basic idea. I also put in the style guide, which is coming up, you can see this double new for each paragraph and how to do all stuff, how to change line spacing, how to change your font. You may know all this, but in case you don't, I want you to identify yourself like this. And I put an example of what that looks like here. And I want you to cite like this, and I put examples here. So you can look over this. I also put some resources down here. MLA is a style and APA is another style. So I've got resources for both in case you need them. All right, so, and I have office hours today. I am going to be in my office hours at noon, but at 12:30 I have to go to another meeting. So I also have office hours by appointment today. So just reach out to me if you need to talk or want to check in, and we will schedule something for today. And of course I'll have office hours between noon and 1 tomorrow. I also should be available during our normal class time if you want to talk. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and check in. Any questions, comments, concerns about the reading, the discussion, or the essay draft? Well, all right. Have a great day and enjoy your 11 o'clock, and I will see you on the discussion thread.
Now is your time to go ahead and grab some snacks or some water. And we'll see y'all at 11.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, Ruby. I just wanted to let you know that the summer bridge leaders are going to be tapping out at 11 and heading off to a meeting. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Will I be full host?
Yes, I believe that Riley can give you that power.
And then who will I wait for? Who will I wait?
We'll join back in at like 11:50 so that you can just hop off.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Bella, before you leave, do you know how many participants we'll have today? Do you have any idea?
I mean, I hope everybody, but it
12?
looks like people are still hopping on.
Okay.
I know I personally was only missing the people who've been excused and one other person, but I don't know about the other people.
Okay. Matthew, what about you? Your group?
I'm missing 3 people.
3? Okay.
So.
Okay. Riley, do you know how many people I'll be missing from your group? Good morning.
Good morning. Hi. I think only one person, but I know a few people left. So I can do a quick little.
Just making sure.
Hopefully that will carry on to our
Yeah, I'm missing one person only, and she's excused. She's at work.
Okay.
Riley, make sure to make her the host so the meeting doesn't end when we kachowie.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me.
No problem. All right, you guys, good morning. I'm gonna give our students another minute maybe or 2 before we begin. How are you guys doing? Wednesday. Good? Yeah. How was homework? Good? No issues? Did you all get the link to this for the survey? Yeah, did you all submit the survey? Yeah. What did you think of the survey?
The survey was really specific.
Was it?
Yeah.
Do you think, what do you think, what type of data do you think we collected?
Huh?
What type of data do you think we collected?
Oh dang. Was it the I want to say categorical?
Okay. Categorical data was pretty dominant, right? Do you remember any questions that collected quantitative data?
Not from the top of my head.
No, okay. So let's quickly review before we continue. So categorical data groups my cases or units. Cases and units are basically the people that you're sampling. So if I ask you for your favorite color, that's categorical, right? Because I'll either say red, blue, pink, categorical. If I ask you for your age, 21, right? 18, 17, even though those are numbers, still categorical because I'm going to be grouping you by numbers. If I ask you for your weight, now that's very different, right? Give me 1 second. Let me see. Thank you, Riley. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, just my words of advice for today's math session. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye. And so then quantitative data. Quantitative data, remember that's data that is numeric, but I can't group people by it. What I can do with these quantitative data is calculate like an average, what we typically call a mean, or like a standard deviation. How much variation do we have within our data, within our observations? So keep that in the back of your mind. Today, we're gonna work with data that is categorical and yet quantitative, okay? Because yes, we're grouping our M&Ms by color, but I wanna know which one was the dominant, which color was dominant, right? Which color did I see the most? Which color did I see the least? What was the color that was like in the middle, right? In the center, a median, and so on. Just before we continue, were we all able to watch all 3 videos? It's gonna be very important. Yes, no? Okay. Well, if you watched all 3 videos, today's Zoom lecture will be basically a breeze, and so with your homework. If you didn't, you might struggle a little, and it might take you a little longer to complete tonight's assignment. So the goal for today is that we work with our M&M data, and you're probably saying, well, what data? We'll get there soon. We're gonna upload our data into a spreadsheet. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. I'm gonna remove my video for a minute. I'm gonna share my screen, and I need you all to go to Canvas for me. Can you all go to Canvas if you're not already there? Go to Canvas. Let me make sure this is sharing with my screen. So I'll give you all a couple seconds to go to Canvas. Remember day 3, quantitative reasoning. And I need you to click on the click here link. And so basically you'll see our task for today. So today we're going to be working with quantitative data grouped by categories. And we're going to learn how to calculate the 5-number summary, how to calculate something that we call interquartile range, how to detect outliers, and how to create these beautiful box plots. So those 3 videos that you had for homework last night, right here, right? We remember? All of those 3 videos were supposed to help you and hopefully make this activity a lot easier. So before we continue, like I said, today we will be working together to practice these techniques of analyzing and displaying these quantitative data. Remember, this got introduced last night through your homework. So maybe if you finish our class assignment soon, you go back and look at those 3 videos just for a refresher, and then you submit your assignment. So we'll talk about your assignment a little later. So if you're here already, now I need you to go to this part where it says do it and click on this link. If you click on this link, you should all have access to this Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet that I created for our data. Okay, so now you officially have, I know I gave you permission yesterday, don't tell anyone, but now you officially have permission from me and everyone else in the math department to open your M&Ms. Open your M&Ms and count how many of each color you have. I'm a very visual person. I created this beautiful image and displayed my data in this way. You don't have to display it in this way. You can simply say, okay, I have 10 red, I have 15 green, and so on. I like to see it. I mentioned yesterday that I usually get a lot of brown in my packages. I got lucky this time. I guess green was the dominant color for me. So I'll give you like a minute or 2 to count your M&Ms. Go for it. Oh, and I do want to mention that for my orange, I know this is not a full M&M. I counted it as a full M&M. Sometimes we have to make little decisions like that. If you feel uncomfortable counting half, a quarter, if you have something like that in your bag as the full M&M and you're like, well, it's not a full size M&M, you can dump it out. I kept it. I don't know. I thought it would be fine. So I'll give you a minute or 2. Go ahead and open your M&Ms, count how many you have of each, and then add it to our Google Excel spreadsheet. So I'll I know I'm not a student, but mine's going to be basically an example. My name, I had 10 red M&Ms. I had 11 orange M&Ms. I had 9 blue M&Ms. Yellow, I had 7. Green, my winning color, I had 15. And brown, I had a total of 4. So my bag was pretty colorful. And if you've already done this part, then go ahead and just enter your data. Do we all have access to the Excel spreadsheet? Are we all okay? Anyone having any issues?
I
I'm
think that
only
we're
on
only view.
view.
Oh no, even though I gave you.
Yeah, I asked just permission right now.
Viewers. Does anyone know how to change those settings? How about if I share it with you guys? Let's see if I can do this. Anyone with the link? Okay, let me update this link really fast. Give me 1 second. So you're gonna get a little behind the scenes of how we work with Canvas. I'm gonna edit our page and I'm gonna change this link. I'm gonna update it and I'm gonna paste. Gonna insert the new link. Gonna give it a minute. No, come on. Okay, now if you can all refresh your Canvas page and just go up here, refresh, and now play with the link and let's see if it works. Is that better?
Yeah, it started working.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Beautiful. So in today's basically Zoom lecture, we're gonna do this the long way. If you ever take 165 because either you grew some interest for statistics or it was required by your major, or you just wanted to satisfy area B4, don't think that we'll do this way. We will use other tools like a calculator that does it for us, a software that does it for us. There's many softwares out there depending on the stats course that you take, but you'll most likely be working with StatKey. That'll be tonight's homework, right? You're going to be working with StatKey. So I won't go too ahead of ourselves, but I'll give you all a minute to enter some more data. Let's see, anything weird, anything crazy? Seems like red, pretty popular with 9s and 10s. 20 blue? Holy crap. Adan, really? 20 blue? 8, 7, 13, 15 blue. Let's see. Did anyone eat their M&Ms prior to today? Yeah. Anyone eating them currently? Wow, I think Adan is the only one with a huge number. Anyone got more than 20 for a color? Anyone know? Okay. So remember a few things to remember. Five number summary is basically a statistical tool that we use because it displays basically our data within 5 numbers. It gives us a good intuition for whether we have any outliers, which you've learned about, whether we have, give me 1 second. Alayla, do you still need help with how we get there? So just in case, you're going to go to your Canvas for this course. You're going to go to modules right here. This is how I get to them. If someone knows of a better way or a shortcut of how we get to our daily assignments, please speak up. So I usually go to modules, then I scroll down, I go to the specific day I am interested in, day 3, and then here at 11 to 11:50 quantitative reasoning workshop, and I click here. And then you'll see a brief introduction for today's Zoom lecture and then a do it. And then this link will take you to the M&M data collection. So remember, our 5 number summary contains the min, a max, Q1, Q3, which are basically medians of the lower half, median of the upper half, and then the median. We don't like outliers, so we like to detect outliers. They can skew our statistics. They can give us inaccurate results. And if we can detect them and if we can take them out, we usually do. And by out, I mean out of our data sets. And then lastly, we will learn how to create a box plot using the 5 number summary. I see that we still have students who are entering data. So I'll give you another 2 minutes. No rush, make sure you're entering your data correctly, double check. I made a small little display before I've entered it. A little visual for me. You don't have to do this, but we tend to do this whenever we're working with data. We make these little displays before we do anything to decide whether there's anything interesting going on. Should I spend any more time? If I think there's something silly going on with my data set, if I've made some type of mistake, and so on. Okay. So once again, give me 1 second. Once again, I'm going to show you how to get here. Remember, you're going to go to Canvas. So my Canvas and your Canvas should look slightly, well, mine will look slightly different, but yet similar. I'm going to go to modules. I'm going to scroll down to day 3, week 1, day 3, right here, Wednesday. And then basically the third little box is the one where we're working in. And you're going to click on this link right here. Because if you click the top one, that'll just take you to Zoom. You want to click where it says click here. And then to get the M&M Google Excel spreadsheet, you're going to click on class M&M data. And that should take you there. I think we only have one more student. We'll give her another minute. Okay, I see. Anyone else need any help? Anyone running into any issues? No. Adan and Jimena, did you not have any brown? No brown?
I had 8. I
8?
didn't put it in. Yeah.
Did you put it?
I just forgot to put it in. My bad. I'll put it in right now, though.
Okay. I don't have the like.
I forgot to
Oh,
press enter.
what's that?
I forgot to press enter.
Okay. How about I enter it for you? Give me 1 second. How many red do you have?
I have 7 red.
7 red.
Yeah.
Okay. How many
And
orange?
10.
10. Oh, not typing. Blue.
Blue, I have 8.
8. Yellow.
13.
Wow. Green.
8.
And then lastly, brown.
9.
9. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Sorry it didn't work. Okay. One more. Wow, you had, Nadia, you had a lot of 8s. Okay. So now that we have all this data, anyone else trying to enter their data? Are we all ready? Okay. For the first example, so I'm going to walk you through doing the 5-number summary, checking for outliers, and creating the box plot with the red M&Ms, okay? Just the red. And then I'm going to create some groups, and I'm going to assign you a specific color. And if you finish everything, that means you create a 5-number summary, you tell me if there's any outliers, and you create the box plot. You don't want to throw away that paper. That's essentially your homework. So there's some motivation in completing all of this as soon as you can within your group members, because basically you'll have a break from homework if you finish all of that tonight. All you'll do is take a picture of your work, right? You'll take a picture of your paper and you'll submit that to Canvas. So let's get started, and hopefully we can get through creating the 5-number summary, the box plots, detecting outliers with the red M&Ms, and then I'll give you all a color, and hopefully I can get you all done with all 3 tasks so that you can simply upload a picture of your work and be done for today. How does that sound? Good? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to share again, but this time I'm going to share the whiteboard. So now you should be able to see the whiteboard. I'm going to try to move this a little so that I can see our data right there, and I'm going to hide this so that I have a whole whiteboard. So remember, the first thing we do whenever we're trying to work with a 5-number summary, outliers, box plots, etc., is that we order our data. And remember, it doesn't mean that we order our data by our cases, right? We order our data by our numbers. So from least to greatest. And remember, I'm working with the red. So I'm going to look at my list, and I notice that the smallest observation we had was 2. It's this one right there. Oh man, my whiteboard disappeared. Okay. And then the next observation, is it 7, you guys? Is 7 the next smallest? I think so. 7, and I have 1, 2, 3 sevens. And I'm gonna double check because we tend to make mistakes, and this is probably why we don't do this by hand. We usually use technology, but we always teach you how to do this by hand once. So 7, 7, 7. Then our next smallest number would be 9. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please help me out. So we have 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 9s. Usually my handwriting isn't this sloppy, but here we are. Okay. Our next value would be 10, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 10s. Okay. The next would be 11, and we saw 11 once. Yeah. Is there any 12s? Yep. How many 12s? Just once. Okay. And then lastly, I think it's our 14. And now let's make sure that we actually have the same number of observations listed out in order. And I believe that we have 19. So I'm going to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Perfect. So a lot of times we like to represent our sample size by saying n equals 19. I don't know why we chose a lowercase n. It is what it is. Whenever you see this n equals 19 or n equals 20, this is representing your sample size. Okay, it just tells you how many data collection, how many observations, or how many cases or units you basically sampled. Okay, now we're ready. So remember our 5-number summary, and I'm going to change our color if I can, or actually I'm just going to leave it alone. So the 5-number summary is composed by a min, which is the smallest value in your data set, which is 2. Do we all see that? Okay, since no one's saying anything, I believe so. Then remember we need Q1. So this is my min, Q1, the median, Q3, and the max. That's always how we create this 5-number summary. So now that I have my min, the next easiest of the 5 would probably be our max, which is the largest, 14. Okay. Then I'm going to target the median. Remember, the median is always the value in the middle. The value in the middle of our data set when it ordered from least to greatest. So now I'm going to start eliminating. So finding the median can be super easy when we have an odd number of observations. Sometimes we have to calculate a small average if we have an even number. So luckily we're odd. So I'm going to eliminate that. And there's many techniques on how we can find the median. I like to eliminate one from the top, one from the bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. As you can tell, it seems like our median is going to be 9. So 9. And we like to denote the median by this little lowercase m. Okay. Now, according to our videos, and there's more than one technique that we can use to find Q1 and Q3. For Q1, we're going to look at all the values that are as big as our median. So I'm going to draw the line basically here. I'm going to take all of these values and I'm going to find another median. So I'm going to do that slash technique once again. So I'm going to eliminate this and this, this and this. As you can tell, this gets pretty sloppy. It's okay. And it seems like our Q1, our first quartile, is also 9. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the upper half. Oops. I'm going to take all of these, including our median, And I'm going to do the process of elimination. 14, 9, 12, 10, 11, 10. And it seems like we're going to end up with a 10. There's our Q3. And that's how we calculate the 5-number summary. So why do we like this 5-number summary? It basically displays our entire data for a certain category or so on. And it breaks it down into chunks of 25, right? So if I look at my data from the min to Q1, that is 25% of my data. From Q1 to the median, another 25%. Remember that the median represents the middle half, which would be 50% of my data. 25 plus 25 is a 50%. From the median to Q3, another 25. And from the Q3 to the max, that would be my entire, 25, not 20. My entire data set, which is, if you add all of these chunks, 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25, that does add up to 100%, or my entire data set. So the first task is done. We've found the 5-number summary. We say find, but we basically calculate. Usually we use technology like a calculator or a software program. Okay, now that I have this 5-number summary, I want to make sure that I don't have any outliers, because if I do, I want to be sure that I tell my reader, hey, we have outliers. So my data is a little skewed, or it might be a little deceiving, and so on. So our next task is to find these outliers. And how do we do this? According to the videos, we take our Q1, our Q3, and then from each of these, we subtract 1.5. Once again, I don't know why 1.5. It's just the value times our IQR, interquartile range. And then we take our Q3. Wait, before I move on, sorry, any questions? If I was going too fast, if you have any doubts, if I made maybe a small mistake.
Can you repeat the outlier explanation?
Oh, okay, how we find them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This outlier, I'm using this rule. Maybe I should go, if you go to Canvas, right above the do it, right here, right above this one, there's these videos that you were assigned for homework. And it was tricky, right? This was a super long video. Let it load, sorry. A super long video, which basically explained how we detect these outliers. Sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't. And what I mean by lucky is that sometimes we can just easily see them within our data set, sometimes we can't. So we have to use this rule of thumb that I'm using right now, right? This rule of thumb is basically the way I'm writing it now. I take my Q1 and I subtract from Q1 1.5 times my IQR. We still need to calculate this value, IQR. And then we're gonna take our Q3 and we're gonna add 1.5 times IQR. And so basically any value below this first one is an outlier. Any value above this one is an outlier. And that's just how, this is our rule of thumb. That's what we use. What we use to basically find or detect these outliers when we can't simply see it within our data set. Does that make a little more sense? It's just a formula that we use. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's first, before we can do anything, right? Oh my gosh. Trying to erase. before we can do anything, we have to find IQR. IQR is just another way of calculating some type of range, right? Or range, interquartile range though. So for IQR, we take Q3 and we subtract Q1. Well, if I take my Q3, I get 10 minus my Q1, which is 9, and I get 1. Now, if I'm going to work with the first one first, for my lower fence, and you'll see why we call this a fence really soon. Other people call it, a lot of us also call this a lower bound, whichever you like. I like a fence because you'll see. It reminds me. So I take my Q1, which is 9, and I'm going to subtract basically 1.5 times 1, which is basically 9 minus 1.5, which is what? Who can tell me? What's 9 minus 1.5?
7.5.
Yes, lovely. Okay. And then for our upper fence or upper bound, I'm going to take my Q3, 10, plus 1.5 times my 1, because that's what my IQR is. I take my 10 plus 1.5. I like to show my work because sometimes if I make a little mistake, I can backtrack and catch my mistakes. I know these are simple numbers for a lot of us. You don't have to show every single step. For example, here a lot of us can see that that's just 10 plus 1, which is 11.5. I still like to illustrate it for myself. So now, basically what this does for me is any value smaller than 7.5 is an outlier. I'm going to erase that because that looks a little weird. So this tells me that any number smaller than 7.5 is an outlier. This tells me that any number bigger, larger, however you want to think of this, than 11.5 is also an outlier. So if I look at my data set for just the red M&Ms, 2 would be an outlier, 12 would be an outlier, and 14 would be an outlier. So I have 3 outliers. Now, the way we display outliers in a box plot is we either use like a X and a little star, a little box, a little circle, depending on the technology that you use. This is how we display them. For us, we're just going to do a dot. We're just going to keep it simple. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute to just either take a screenshot for those of you who are using some technology that if you're not writing this down, because I'm going to clear this out pretty soon. Or if you're writing this down, I'm going to give you another minute to finish writing because I'm going to erase everything so that I can show you how we create this box plot. Please make sure that you have the 5-number summary down and that you've written these outliers and that you've written your lower fences value and your upper fences value.
Wouldn't 7 be an outlier too?
Oh my goodness, good catch. I paid attention to the 7. These are technically outliers. Seven to 12, 14. Okay, are we ready? Okay, I'm gonna clear all my drawings and now we're gonna continue. So first I'm gonna walk you through how we would just draw a simple box plot with our 5-number summary without worrying about our outliers for now. So remember, this was 2, 9, 9, 10, 14. We like to give ourselves a scale, just like if this were a regular plot. Remember when we have more than one category, remember that we have red, blue, yellow, all of those. We basically title those on the y-axis, right? This would be the y-axis right here. So I'm just gonna say red M&Ms. And we were we're gonna basically display counts, right? These are counts, these are frequencies. A lot of the times we ask you to put that on the y-axis. I'm gonna leave it alone for now. And then I'm going to give myself a numeric scale that's appropriate for my data set. Remember, this should only go from 0, maybe, and then maybe I'm going to give myself a little more space and I'm going to say 15. And I might just count by 3. So starting with 0, and then I'm going to say maybe 3 goes here, 6 goes here, 9, and 12, and then maybe you like to give yourself little, oops, that's too close. Hopefully I can erase one of these tally marks or both. One, 2, 4, 5, and you try to make it as nice as possible and as symmetric and so on. You get the idea. And now remember, if I were to draw this box plot without any outliers, my min would be here at 2, and this can be anywhere on this y-axis, and I'm just going to do it in the middle. And we display the min by this little mark. Min. Then from our min to our Q1, our Q1 is here at 9. I'm just going to do another little mark. And then remember our median was also 9, so I can't really draw another mark. I leave it there. Then the next value I'm interested in is 10, and I'm going to do another mark there. And then 11, which is a little before 12, and there. I mean, sorry, that's 14. Jesus, my writing. I'm going to erase this here. 14 over here. Okay. Now remember, the 5-number summary goes in order from min to max. So will my box plot, min to max. And then from your min to your Q1, you draw a straight line. From your max to your Q3, you draw another straight line. And then from your Q1 to your Q3, remember our Q1 and our median are the same. We draw a box. So this represents Q1, this represents Q3, and our max. And normally when we have beautiful data, we end up with something that looks a little more like this, right? And our median is displayed by this line in the middle. Or line in the middle. But in this case, our median and our Q1 are the same value. Normally you can tell this is the min, this is Q1, this is the median, this is Q3, and this is the max. As you can tell, we have a lot of outliers, so it's a little weird and I'm not surprised. Does anyone have a question, comment? I can't see it at the moment because I'm working with whiteboard. So now you might be asking yourself, well, we discovered a bunch of outliers. How does this work, right? I'm gonna give you a minute to finish writing this down because normally we want to give our readers the box plot with outliers, right? We want to be able to tell them that there's outliers. Do we need more time? No? Okay. So, oh, not eraser. I'm going to go ahead and erase this now, because remember, that's not the box plot we want to display. We want to be able to tell the reader that there's outliers. So I told you that these outliers get displayed by little stars and asterisks. So we know we have an outlier here at 2, and I'm just going to draw a little circle just because I don't want this to look too overwhelming. And then I know 7 is also an outlier, right? Because anything below 7.5. But I'm not going to draw 3 dots. We draw 1 dot to represent that value of 7, right? So we have 2 is an outlier, 7 is an outlier. And we also discovered that 12 and 14 were outliers. So another dot here for 12, and then another dot here for, 14. So now what happens? So now your min becomes your next smallest value not considered an outlier, and that should be 9. So remember, we draw a little mark. But then our median has not changed. Our median is still 9, so I'm going to leave that alone. And then our Q3 is our next value that we want to detect, and we said 10 was our Q3, which is basically here. And I know the spacing looks weird now. Remember, we write so it's going to look unsatisfying because our Q1 is also our min, not considered an outlier. It's also our median. So this is going to look really unsatisfying. This box plot is basically going to look like that. So notice that your new min is 9. Your basically your Q1 is still 9. Your median is 9. And then our Q3 displayed there. So it's going to be weird because this is our min, not considered an outlier. This is also our Q1, and this is also our median. I know, I don't like it myself. And then this one right here is our Q3. So now what is our max? Our max is the next value not considered, the next largest value not considered an outlier. And for us, that's 11. So 11, I'm going to say it's about here, and I'm going to draw that straight line there. So this is our new max, not considered an outlier. And you can all agree with me that this is a pretty ugly box plot, right? This is what we love to see, but it's not usually an ideal case. We can't control our data. So from our box plot, we can see that we have multiple outliers, right? The value 2, the value 7, the value 12 and 14 are all considered outliers. And then our next value not considered an outlier, which would be our next smallest value, and according to our data set, that's 9. 9 is also our Q1, and 9 is also our median. And then 10 for Q3, and then our next largest value not considered an outlier was 11 according to our data set for the red M&M. And we've officially drawn our box plot for the red data set, red M&Ms. Any questions? Okay, it is now your turn. So I'm just gonna assign you some colors. Please keep track of your color because that's what you'll be assigned for homework. And basically for your homework assignment tonight, you have to do exactly what I just did with you. You're gonna give me, let me take this off. You're gonna give me a 5-number summary for a specific color. You're gonna give me the same box for that same color, and you're gonna denote your outliers. So I'm gonna create some breakout rooms, and you can talk to each other for the, we're actually running out of time. So I'll let you choose a color, any color but red for your tonight's homework assignment. Does that make sense? So you're gonna be doing for homework exactly what we just did in class. Any questions?
So are we just doing it for one color or for multiple?
Yeah. You can do multiple if you'd like, but at least one. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to give me a 5-number summary. You're going to give me my IQ. You're going to check for outliers, and you're going to draw me a box plot. You're going to take a picture of your beautiful a box plot with the 5-number summary, and you're going to denote outliers by a little dot, a little star, and so on. And you're going to take a picture and upload that picture to Canvas. Does anyone need to see where to upload this picture of your work? What is the purpose of the box plot and how does this help us understand data? Beautiful, great question. So the box plot will tell me whether I have a data set that's symmetrical. Symmetrical means that I have equal spaces between my data, that I don't have anything weird going on, no outliers. It'll tell me that I have outliers, right? It tells me that, hey, these observations are extreme. Maybe something happened. Maybe if we were to take out these outliers and calculate a mean, an average, the average would change drastically. It just changes it drastically. And so if we were doing this box plot for wedding cost, right? How much are weddings now? They're like really expensive. You don't want any outliers because it's gonna make your consumers think that the wedding will cost way more than it actually does. It's good for the bridal people who sell that sell the dresses, that basically offer the venues. They want you to believe that it's gonna cost you $25,000 for this wedding. And so drawing these box plots help you basically see and detect all these things that can go wrong. Do we have outliers? Is there anything fishy happening? We like to draw these box plots, like the one I gave it a heart, right? We want to see that there's nothing weird going on. So it'll basically help you display the 5-number summary, where the min is, where the max is, where the median of the lower half data is, where the median of the upper half data, what is the actual middle of my data set. And then of course, it displays outliers. So it's just a tool that we use to display our data using some type of plot, right? Because I showed you one way I could display my data by just listing out my colors, right? I did little rows. That's one way we can see our data displayed. It's just a graphical technique that we use. Does that answer your question? The link wasn't on Canvas. I'm so sorry. Do you have time to attend my office hours today?
Yeah, what time are you free?
They start at 2 to 3, and if that doesn't work for you, send me an email, because that's concerning. I don't know why you weren't able to link it. Okay, I'm getting, oh, thank you, Dom. I'm getting a lot of questions on where we upload this, and I'm gonna take like a minute to show you. So I'm gonna share my screen. Go to your Canvas, please. Go to Canvas. So remember the way I get there, and if there's a better way, please tell me. Go to Canvas, you're gonna go to day 3, module day 3. I'm gonna scroll all the way down, And then you'll see complete on your own time, quantitative reasoning homework, day 3. And notice that there it is. Remember that we did this example, the red M&Ms in a single pack, basically kind of thing. We did this first part, and we did a lot of this in class with the red M&Ms. You're going to repeat the whole process with a different color. If you want to work with the yellow, if you want to work with the blue, if green is your favorite color and you choose green, that's fine. And then you're going to see, if you don't know how to submit an assignment, there's these resources, these guides, but you should have a little link that'll say, hey, submit my assignment. And then you can do a JPEG, you can take a picture with your cell phone, paste it on Google Docs, and then paste or link your Google Doc, whichever way you can link it. If you run into any issues, I do the office hours from 2 to 3, or you can send me an email and I'll get back to you, and so on. Does that make a little more sense of where you're uploading your assignment? Okay. Anything you need, let me know. Send me an email. If you struggle with submitting your assignment and you want to make sure that you submit it on time, email it to me. That's okay too. Okay, and then we'll work out on how we submit online. Any questions? All right, you guys. Well, thank you. I had a lot of fun in showing you how to calculate the 5-number summary, how to detect outliers, and how to draw these beautiful box plots, even though our box plot wasn't the best. Any questions? Okay. All right, Riley, I think it's back to you. Are you full host? Okay, cool.
I think I am. Thank you.
All right. Bye, you guys. Bye.
Wait, I don't think you're Riley's the host yet.
Okay, let me see. So I'm gonna assign and leave, right?
Yep.
Thank
Just
you.
hover over my name.
Okay.
Noah.
Bye.
I'm gonna stop the recording now. Is that fine, Riley?
Yeah, that's perfect.